Your football Sunday has dwindled down to this. Just a bunch of busted bets and broken fantasy dreams. You need this, and we're here for you. Immediate reaction, big opinions, gang tackling. Be one with the channel. It's DA Sunday Pig Pie. Oink, oink, suckers.
All right, everybody. Welcome inside the Sunday Pig Pile. I'm your host, DA, and we are locked in to watch DA live over the next hour, breaking down everything from today's action around the NFL, as well as yesterday's action in the NFL and the passing of a baseball icon. I know we have so many great Watch the Aliens in the Bay Area. In Oakland, there were huge Rickey Henderson fans, have always been. He's one of the heartbeats of that community. So you know how we got a lot of love for Oakland on this show. We'll talk about the passing of Rickey and his legacy and the type of guy that he was coming up later on in the program. Also coming up in just a few minutes, Zack Rosenblatt's going to join us, senior writer for The Athletic. Zack was part of that amazing piece about Woody Johnson earlier this week. That really showed us some insight into how the Jets are run, shockingly so. Zack's going to join us in just a few minutes live after the Jets lost today to the Rams over at MetLife Stadium. So stay tuned for that. Also, the guys at Last Dive Bar sent me such a great Christmas gift this week that I want to share that with you. You got to see this kind of epic, iconic gift that they sent me. It's just too good not to. If you haven't seen it already, or even if you have, you'll want to stick around for a hand-engraved cartoon wooden cartoon head of me. I mean, come on. What could be better than this? But let's begin today with the New York Giants, because we saw a rookie quarterback in Michael Penix take his first snaps as a starter today against the Giants. And this was a dramatic decision by the Falcons. They had spent $100 million guaranteed on Kirk Cousins, and they decided to rip the Band-Aid off. Let's just go to the rookie. Cousins is sinking. We want to float our playoff chances. And even if we don't make the postseason, we've given our young guy 3 starts down the stretch. It was hard to argue with that because Cousins was so bad. And because once they decided to go to Penix, it really didn't matter what time of the year it was. They were all going to be starts towards next season when Penix was obviously the starter coming out of camp, if you've already turned the page from Cousins. Penix looked really good. Penix looked really efficient. Penix looked really comfortable. And there were 2 things that stood out about that to me. Number one, it stood out to me that so often the fans, the media, the impatience of the NFL and modern society is start the rookie now, start the rookie now, start the rookie now. And I just see time and time again, example after example of quarterbacks that were allowed to wait, to bake, to simmer a little bit, and it pays dividends. You can't tell me that waiting 14 or 15 weeks for Michael Penix didn't help him in the way that he looked today. Now, playing the Giants helps anybody. It's a nice soft spot in anybody's schedule. But to me, this is always where you have to resist pulling the trigger, reacting to pressure, and feeling like we live in this now society. There is a benefit to waiting. And I think Penix showed that today. The second part of this is Penix was so smooth, and young quarterbacks oftentimes lock onto 1 or 2 receivers. So you could forgive Penix if it was Drake London 12 times today. He spread the football around. He hit just about everybody, and most of them as first or second reads. So it was, hey, that's where I'm supposed to go. That's where I'm going. That's where I'm supposed to go. It's not there. I'm going there. As a young quarterback, that's really impressive. And it, I think, is going to really open up the things we thought Kirk Cousins would for that Falcons offense. And for Atlanta, even if they don't catch the Buccaneers, even if they don't make the postseason, you can see getting these 3 starts this year versus waiting until next year to start him is going to end up paying dividends. So I just think that the way that this thing unfolded is going to end up being probably a win for the Falcons. The way that it happened isn't necessarily that, because you spent $100 million on a guy that got 14 starts. That's money wasted. You could have had anybody for that. If all you were looking for is 7-7 and then to hand the keys over to Michael Penix, there are plenty of guys at a much cheaper cost. It will end up working out because Arthur Blank's going to cut the check for it. But ultimately getting here, there's a lot more efficient way to get here than that. On the Giants side of things, Joe Shane and Brian Daboll are trying to keep their job in New York by saying, we never got our quarterback. We never had our quarterback, so you can't grade us on that. I'm sure that's their defense inside those walls. And I don't think that John Mara wants to make a change if he doesn't have to. But it is so hard to look at the Giants and the way that they're losing, completely outclassed yet again, to watch Drew Lock, a guy they gave a $5 million contract to this offseason, to say, you are our steady backup to Daniel Jones in case anything goes wrong. And Drew Lock throw just a boneheaded, stupid pick six, and then also have 2 other turnovers. I mean, that's the guy that either you picked or didn't coach up well enough for today for the spot. And look at the other young quarterbacks that the Giants could have selected that they did not select. Okay, they were not in the running for the top 3 quarterbacks that were selected in the draft, right? You can't kill them on not getting Caleb Williams, Jayden Daniels, or Drake May. Now, all 3 of those guys look like they're going to be starters for a long time, but you can just say that's bad luck. Giants come up at number 6. They take Malik Nabers. Well, that guy that started today against you, Michael Penix, was on the board when you picked 6. J.J. McCarthy, who the Vikings may have started sometime this season, was also available. He went number 10. And so did Bo Nix, who went number 12 to the Broncos, who has started all season long and been an effective piece of a team that may make the postseason. This is a point that Pat Leonard, New York Daily News, brought up with us last week, and I think it's worth repeating. The Giants brass wants another shot because they will convince you they haven't gotten a chance to draft their guy. But they could have drafted 3 players last season that are other teams' guys who the early returns could be pretty good. And they're getting worse as the season goes on. Hard to make the argument Brian Daboll and Joe Shane deserve back the way that this season is ending. A complete and utter failure. So that's one side of the MetLife misery double bubble over in the swamp. And we'll get to the rest of the slate around the NFL coming up here shortly. Jayden Daniels' comeback over the Eagles today was a thing of beauty. And that guy's just going to be a stud for a long time. I mean, wouldn't you just want to buy stock if you could right now in Jayden Daniels being a league MVP down the road, being one of the 3 or 4 best quarterbacks in football in short form? That guy just has all of the tools. And today to come back the way that he did against a division foe and late season playoff caliber atmosphere, that really was big time by Jayden. But this story from The Athletic this week was something else. We talked about it on my SiriusXM show over the week. It was everywhere around SportsCenter, around FS1. It was all over your news feeds. It was on your socials. The article done in The Athletic by 3 esteemed football writers, Diana Rossini, who's joined us here on the show before, Michael Silver, who's been around the NFL for decades, and Zack Rosenblatt. And they just put together one of the most amazing pieces I've seen done about an owner in the NFL in quite some time. And this is a story that sheds light on why the Jets are the Jets and why even when you make GM and coaching changes and maybe quarterback changes as well, sometimes some things stay the same. Joining us here on the show this evening is Zack Rosenblatt, senior writer for The Athletic. Zach, how you doing, my man? Good to have you here on the show.
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Now, you got done earlier today watching another thrilling Jets game. I mean, how brutal is it to watch an end-of-season Jets squad that has nothing to play for and put up 9 points?
I mean, it continues to blow my mind that they've had so many of the same outcomes where they clearly are in the pole position to win these games and just repeated mistake after mistake, weird decision. You go into the fourth quarter, you have a chance, and then you do all these things that are just mind-blowing, and it just happened so many times this year. There was a stat that they're only the second team since like 1940 to not punt in a game, but also not score 10 points. Like they find new ways to lose constantly. So that's just kind of been the season in a nutshell. And I honestly can't even believe there's still 2 games left. It feels like I've been through 3 different seasons in this one season.
What was the most mind-blowing part of their decision-making today? Because you can look at some coaching, you can look at some quarterbacking. There was a lot of things on the docket today that left you scratching your head.
I mean, the 2 decisions to go for it on fourth down didn't really make much sense ultimately. They went for it on their own 33-yard line in the second quarter, and Jeff Ulbricht's response to that was he just wanted to be aggressive. I get, like, it almost would have been better if he said, like, what do we have to lose at this point, frankly, as they just ran it up the middle and got stuffed. And then they worked their way up the field like a 14-play drive. They get to the 13-yard line. They just need points, and they go for it, and they don't get any points, and it kind of sucks the life out of the offense after that. So it's a combination of all these things. And Aaron Rodgers holding on to the ball too long, getting sacked, losing it, the kicker missing a field goal and an extra point. It's just one thing after another that just adds up to a bad football team.
The story this week that you guys came together on about Woody Johnson is jarring. There's no other way to put it. It is jarring. I guess we're supposed to assume in some regards that an owner has some confidants that might not be all that qualified, that might help him shape some decision-making. I don't think we assume that 2 teenage kids are the ones that do that in many organizations. Yeah. When it comes to the response this week about this article, were most people like, yeah, shrug their shoulders, that's the Jets? Or were most people like me shocked that 2 teenage sons have that much influence over decision-making?
Yeah, I think the general response has been shock, especially just like the details of how they've been influencing things, and not even just the influence. It's, the anecdotes we had about Woody and his family, his sons, in the locker room after losses, like berating players and criticizing them with them in earshot. Like that's just not, the behavior of a team that has a good culture, and it always starts at the top. And, you have an owner that long before his sons were a factor in this, like he's always been someone who was chasing headlines. He wanted to win the headlines. The Jets, a lot of times the joke is always they're the offseason champions. They've won the offseason so many years in a row, and they don't make it to the playoffs at the end of the season. And that just kind of ties into this. Like he seeks out the headlines. And so the flip side of that is he also reads all the headlines, and he sees what people are saying, and through his sons and through himself. And that influences a lot of what the Jets do. And, you've seen the result of that. You've seen rash decision-making at various points, firing Robert Saleh after week 5. It hasn't worked. Just a lot of things that they've done. And, ultimately he's been the owner for 25 years. They haven't made the playoffs in 14 years, the longest drought in sports. And the one constant has been Woody Johnson at the top of it.
When the Jets, have this type of dysfunction at the top, it almost makes you wonder if Aaron Rodgers knew the depths of this when he decided to go to the Jets. Do you feel like he's disillusioned by that part of it?
Yeah, I think to a degree. I think he's been taken aback. I think he knew coming here that it was a dysfunctional organization, or at least that it was known for that. But he felt in his head that he could help pull them back to the middle, back to sanity to a degree. And I think pretty quickly after he got here, he realized that was going to be a challenge. I know, he gets along really well with Christopher Johnson, Woody's brother, but Woody and Aaron, I don't think I've ever really seen eye to eye. And Aaron really didn't want him to fire Robert Saleh when he did. He even asked him to stay patient in a phone call before it happened, and that didn't happen. And, everybody jumped on Aaron thinking that he was the one that caused it, which is part of the frustration, I'm sure, because when that was going to happen, everybody was going to think Aaron pushed for Robert Saleh to be fired. And so I just think, the idea around here was that they just needed a quarterback, and that was going to fix everything. And it's clear that they have a lot of other problems that they need to address first.
From the anecdote about how Woody Johnson didn't want to make the Jerry Jeudy trade because of his Madden ratings, to, as you said, his kids using social media to tell him who they should or should not start or play or trade for or draft. One might say, well, the Jets could look at this and say, this is overblown. This is hyperbole. Obviously, we don't make decisions based on the kids. This is a non-story. And instead, you got a quote from the Jets. Their spokesperson said, the organization's decision-making process, Brick and Jack's observations, quote, are used as a reference point. So they actually admitted the two teenage kids, their say actually is a reference point for an NFL organization. Were you shocked that the Jets spokesperson admitted that they use this?
So I'd say I was more surprised that he was willing to put it out there that he knew this. I think everybody's kind of known that this is a problem, including people that work in the organization. I think there are people internally that have tried to sway Woody from listening to his football people. But yeah, ultimately, I think and I'm happy you pointed that out, because I think a lot of people have kind of lost that in reading the story. People often assume that these things are just all bitter former employees and stuff like that. We have not only the spokesman quoted, we have people who are in the building currently talking about these issues. But yeah, the PR guy going on the record and saying that it's just a reference point, that's part of the problem. Like, it's the fact that these are things that are even being referenced is a problem. Like that, I've been saying this for weeks now, probably since they fired Saleh. Like, it feels hopeless right now for Jets fans, but it could turn quickly. Like, you look at the New York Knicks, James Dolan for the longest time was considered the worst owner in sports. He hires Leon Rose, hands him the keys, and lets him do his thing. You don't hear about James Dolan anymore. If Woody Johnson is willing to hire somebody really smart, hand them the keys, and let them run the organization, then they can turn this around. And that's what it comes down to. When you have somebody who doesn't really have a football background in Woody, he's going to find what sounds like it makes sense, and he's going to try and enact those things. Whereas somebody who's been in the league and understands how things work, they're going to look at it from a different perspective. And one thing I always say about Woody is he's very much results oriented as opposed to process oriented. So when things aren't working, he's like, well, why isn't it working? We need to fix it, as opposed to figuring out the process of getting things to work. And so I think everything starts there when it comes to the Jets' problems.
Do you think that Woody Johnson will be embarrassed, ashamed that any of this came out? Because if I saw this in print and the entire world was talking about how I was taking advice from my kids about how I ran my business, I would be humiliated. But do you think that affects him that way?
The only person who knows that answer is him. I do get the sense that there's some, I don't know if hope's the right word, but a desire to maybe point this out to Woody, like, look, this is what people are saying about you. This is what people think about the way you run things. Like, the Jets are being roundlessly mocked right now. And if anything was going to be a wake-up call, maybe this is it. But until he changes, or changes the way he operates, or changes the way the Jets operate, they're going to keep falling into the same traps that they always do, and chasing the headlines and reacting too much to the headlines. And the best advice I would give to anybody, but especially Woody Johnson, would be to delete Twitter off your phone. Stop looking at what people are saying, and let your football people make the football decisions.
Elsewhere in the AFC, let's talk about teams that actually have a chance here. Super Bowl contenders in reality, not just talk before the season. The Kansas City Chiefs are 14-1, and we have yet to really see them play a great football game. Do you view the Chiefs as playing possum until the playoffs, or do you think that it means they're more vulnerable than they have been in recent years, despite the record?
Yeah, it's the weirdest one-loss team I can remember, but I think ultimately you always have to just assume the Chiefs are going to turn it on the playoffs, because they do it every year. Until that doesn't happen, I'm not going to assume that they're not going to be the Chiefs in the playoffs. They still have Andy Reid. They still have Patrick Mahomes. That defense is really good. The receivers, they just got Hollywood Brown back. They're starting to get healthier. If Isaiah Pacheco came back recently, he's getting healthier. So I think the arrow is more likely pointing up than down for them still. The AFC is better. I think it keeps getting better. There's some really, really talented opponents they're going to have to go against, the Bills, the Ravens, like all these teams. But at the end of the day, they're all fighting to beat the Chiefs.
Is there a better chance for somebody in the AFC playoffs to knock off the Chiefs before the Super Bowl? Or if the Chiefs are going to lose, it happens in the Super Bowl by the NFC?
Oh man, that's a good way of phrasing it. I think they can get knocked off in the AFC. I think this Bills team is really, really scary. But I think ultimately the two teams that, as long as Jalen Hurts is healthy, the Eagles and the Lions to me are the scarier opponents than even the AFC teams. I just think they bring something a little different than these the ones in the AFC. I think the Bills are entirely powered by Josh Allen, and when like the talent around him isn't quite the level that maybe it even was in past years, but there's having a year to remember. But yeah, I don't know. It's going to be a hard road. I do think it's going to be a hard road in the AFC, but I do still, if I'm sitting here right now, I still think the Chiefs probably get to the Super Bowl.
We have 3 openings right now around the NFL with coaching vacancies. How many more do you assume we'll have once we get to the Monday following the final regular season game?
Yeah, my guess would be another like 3 or 4 openings. You look at the Giants, that seems pretty clear. The Jaguars, maybe the Raiders. The Cowboys are one that's up in the air if they don't make the playoffs. So there's going to be a decent amount of openings. These jobs, like on paper as of right now, the ones that we know for sure are going to be open don't really seem that appealing if you just look at them. It's a lot of teams that don't really have a quarterback, or it's a bad ownership situation or whatever it is. So it's going to be a very interesting offseason for coaching candidates like a Mike Vrabel or a Ben Johnson, who are going to be very picky with the kind of teams they want to coach. And I'm very curious to see how it plays out.
You think it's inevitable that the Giants job opens up?
I do. I think they should do a clean sweep. I get the sense that Daboll is gone, and I'm not as sure about Shane. But I don't think it ever really works when you only fire one or the other. And I don't think Shane has done a great job of building a roster that can win games. So the Giants are a very interesting one, and I'm very curious to see what people around the league think of that job, because they have some talent, and they're going to have a top 2 pick. So in theory, you could get a rookie quarterback. But yeah, I don't think Daboll is going to be back next season.
Well, the Giants job seems very desirable simply because John Mara doesn't ever want to fire anybody. He's just forced to because he keeps hiring really bad coaches. You're right. There's a lot of talent gaps on the roster, but this team's going to have a top 5 pick. They need a quarterback. They can draft a quarterback with one of those with that pick. And then, you kind of reset everything. But I don't know how John Mara can look himself in the mirror and say, the Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll have done enough to earn this job back, unless you go back to year number 1, because it seems like they've gotten worse as time has gone on as GM and head coach.
Yeah, the thing, John Mara, I used to cover the Giants before I covered the Jets. The thing he hates more than anything is being embarrassed. And so, you look back at 2021, he had no intention of firing Joe Judge that year. And you get to the end of the season, Joe Judge has this embarrassing press conference, and then, he like kneels in on 3rd down, and everybody's making fun of them, and he fires Joe Judge because the noise was getting too loud. And it feels the same way here. He gave a vote of confidence, which I thought was kind of wild, in the middle of this season. And they're probably the worst team in the NFL. You have fans flying banners over the stadium, and that's one thing that John Mara can't stand. And I think ultimately, again, it's a different side of the same coin when it comes to Woody. At some point, John Mara needs to do a little bit of reflection, and the Giants need to do a little bit of reflection, change, the way they go about things. I think Mara does give his people more leeway to operate than maybe Woody Johnson does, but the way John Mara has operated also has not worked, because the two teams have been 2 of the worst in the NFL over the last decade, frankly. So
absolutely awful. Now, we know that Bill Belichick wasn't getting any sniffs, so he had to go to college. Do you think Pete Carroll could get sniffs? Because I've heard he wants to coach again. And if there's 7 openings around the NFL, I know that old guys aren't in, but I mean, Pete was much better than Bill by the end. Could he get a sniff?
I don't see why not. I still think he's a really, really good coach. And even if you weren't going to hire him as your head coach, I think he'd be an awesome, whether it's a GM or a president of football operations, somebody to help build a culture. And to your point, yeah, he is older, but if you hear him talk or you watch him, the way he moves around, like, he's got energy of a young man. And so I still think he could be a really good coach for somebody. And if you're a team that wants an experienced coach, I don't know that you can do much better than him. If you're not looking at like Mike Vrabel, who I think is the top candidate out there, I think Pete Carroll should be under consideration if he wants to coach. Is
the Bears job the best job that's going to be open?
Yeah, I think it is. It largely, I guess, depends on what a hypothetical coach thinks of Caleb Williams, but he's a young quarterback on a rookie deal. They have talent on that defense. The main downside would be you're coming into a spot where the GM is already there, and a lot of times When you're not on the same timeline, it gets very complicated. But I think that's pretty clearly the best job to me.
Finally, do you think you'll be covering Aaron Rodgers next year as a Jet?
I go back and forth on this. I still lean towards no. As we alluded to earlier when we were talking about our article, him and Woody's relationship has deteriorated a bit. But I do think there's some openness to the possibility that he could be back, because both the Jets might not be able to get anybody better, and he might not have other options. And so whoever the head coach or GM is, I think it'll ultimately be their call. If, let's say Mike Vrabel or whatever GM, if he comes in and says, well, I want to win in 2025, Aaron Rodgers is the best shot at that. If these are coaches that are more into developing and thinking about the next 5 years, then I don't know if they want to coach Aaron Rodgers at 42 when he wants complete control of the offense.
Zack Rosenblatt joins us, senior writer for The Athletic. The piece that you, Diana, and Michael did this week was just incredible work, incredible journalism. Great job. Thank you so much for joining me here on the show tonight. I know our audience really appreciates it. We got a bunch of hardcore football fans that love getting the inside dirt, and so you definitely are appreciated around here. Zack, thanks so much for joining us, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man. It was great to talk to you.
You too. Zack Rosenblatt joining us from The Athletic here on Watch DA Live. Excellent stuff. And if you missed any part of that, we'll play some of that on the Sirius XM show tomorrow morning. So make sure that you are locked in tomorrow morning between 6 and 9 a.m. Eastern time on Channel 82 Mad Dog Sports Radio. So a couple of things I wanted to get to here on the day that was in football. One thing is Jayden Daniels. I really like Jayden on draft night. I really thought that he could be the number one pick of the draft. And I really felt as though Caleb Williams got to number one because he was assumed to be number one for so long. That if you had really started from zero, we don't know anything, who's the best quarterback in this draft as of November 1st, December 1st, even after the football seasons are over, I think the case was Jayden Daniels is the best quarterback in this draft. But because Caleb had so much expectation around him, dating back to Oklahoma, dating back to when he was recruited, and then transferring to USC to follow Lincoln Riley, and then going into his final season with the Trojans, because he was always that guy, I really felt like people wanted to see in him what they had heard about him. Whereas I saw Jayden Daniels as a guy that most people hadn't noticed before the Heisman Trophy campaign at LSU. And then he won it. And midway through the season, people said, wow, this guy's really great. You saw something today that I don't know if Caleb Williams has. Now, Caleb doesn't have a decent head coach, changed offensive coordinators. There's a lot of tumultuous situations around the Bears, and so it's not fair for me to grade out Caleb big picture after just one season. But I have seen Jayden Daniels multiple times this season in late game situations or comeback situations or fourth quarter situations go, everyone out of the way, I got this. And that is something that cannot be coached. It is not something that is taught. It is something inherent. Now, sometimes it comes with success. Sometimes you taste success and go, oh, now I'm confident. Now I can do it. Or I'm getting confident. It wasn't like Tom Brady was Hall of Fame QB, Mr. Comeback in 2000, 2001. But Tom Brady, even by the end of that rookie season, the Patriots brass knew we got something here. This kid's a little different. He's tenacious. He wants it. He's hungry. He's confident. We got to keep him around. And when we get to the Super Bowl in 2001, there's a moment at the end of regulation where John Madden infamously says, I think they should just play for OT. And I heard an anecdote this week where Bill Belichick looks at Charlie Weiss, and Charlie Weiss says to Bill, do you want us to put the bats away? Kneel on it. Take a knee. Or do you want us to swing? And Bill says, let's see if we can get a first down. And they do. And then suddenly it's okay. Now, at that moment, Bill says, let's see. Because there is something in Brady at that point in time. There is something. And once they get one first down, it's like, okay, off to the races. Let's see what the kid's got. It goes down the field, lines them up for the game-winning field goal from Vinatieri. Boom. And that was a story that Ernie Accorsi told Mad Dog on my channel, Mad Dog Sports Radio, earlier in the week. And it made a lot of sense. And I think that Jayden Daniels, I'm not saying he's going to be Tom Brady. I'm just saying that you have a certain thing late in games. Okay, we can do this. I got this. Let's go. And Jayden Daniels showed it again today. That's a furious comeback against a pretty good Eagles secondary. And it's a playoff type situation. And he goes down the field, down 5 for the game-winning score with 10 seconds to play. Jayden Daniels is special. Jayden Daniels is legit special. And he's even Kingsbury proof. How about that? Cliff Kingsbury, who I consider one of the most overrated coaches of all time. Surely a better OC than he is head coach. He is even proof against the Cliff Kingsbury second half swoons that are so predictable every single year. So I'm a huge Jayden Daniels fan. I say this often. The worst thing that ever happened to the Giants was Tommy DeVito, capiche? Because they won 2 meaningless games last year, which took them out of the running of the top 3 picks. And look what happened. The Bears were never going to trade out of number 1 because they wanted Caleb. They got their guy. But Washington at 2, Patriots at 3, those 2 spots, you lose enough games, you could have had one of those 2 guys. Either one of them would have been a solution. And now instead, you're still holding on to capiche and idiocy like that without a quarterback. And Jayden Daniels is going to haunt you for the rest of his career. The kid is amazing. Absolutely amazing. Really, really, truly amazing. Let me say this about the Kansas City Chiefs. I have said, and I'm on record, so I can't walk this back, that I thought the Chiefs, and I still do, will lose in the AFC playoffs. I do not think they're going to go 3-peat. I think somebody's going to get them in the AFC playoffs. And it's just an incredibly difficult thing to do to get to 3 consecutive Super Bowls. We've never seen a back-to-back champion get to a 3rd Super Bowl. We've seen teams that have lost a Super Bowl get to a 3rd in a row, but never ones that have won 2 in a row going for a 3rd. So it's against all odds they even make the Super Bowl. And I'm going to play the odds here. And I do think there's been times this year where they are playing with fumes, on fumes, and they've got not a lot left in the tank. That being said, Saturday, I have to admit, acting like I know, even if I've studied the NFL for as long as I can remember, even if I've done this job for more than 20 years, even if I've been part of NFL films, anthologies, and talk to people in and around the game that have far more insight and experience than I do. I can't act like I know anything because I don't think anybody knows anything besides the Chiefs are their own entity. The fact that Patrick Mahomes with a high ankle sprain is actually more efficient than when he's healthy, to me, tells you all you need to know about guessing or betting what history tells you about something like this. This is a stat that Pro Football Network put together a couple of days ago. Actually, it was last night, okay, after Patrick Mahomes did what he did to the Houston Texans. Mahomes' passing stats in games in which he plays with a high ankle sprain are just as good, if not better, than his career averages. In his career, healthy, he has a 101 passer rating. When he's been injured, he has a 110 passer rating. When he's had a high ankle sprain, he's thrown for 18 touchdowns against 1 interception. 18-1. In terms of yards per attempt, he averages 8.3 yards per attempt when injured, 7.6 when he's healthy. It doesn't make any sense. He actually, even rushing wise, averages 5 yards per carry on a high ankle sprain, 5.5 when he's healthy. So everything that you kind of have to throw out with the Chiefs. Mahomes, I thought it was negligent to play him on Saturday. Why, when you have a 2-game lead with 3 to play, would you bother with a game on short rest with your franchise quarterback on a high ankle sprain when you can save him and just play him 10 days later on a Wednesday Christmas and then have another 10 days if you need it, if he's got to play week 18? In terms of just logistics, sheer math there, it didn't make any sense to play Patrick Mahomes on Saturday. None. You had a 2-game lead with 3 to play. Even if you lose Saturday against the Texans, he comes back on a 10-day rest for Christmas. And then if you have to play week 18, he comes back for that one. No, didn't matter. Play him, practice him at full the whole week. And then does it look like he's banged up or dinged up? Of course not. So when you talk about things like that, the other stat, which is completely mind-blowing, is that there are 4 teams, I believe, that have not cracked 30 points scoring this season. Giants, Jaguars, Raiders, 3 terrible, dreadful, worst teams in football, and the Chiefs. Make it make sense that the Chiefs are one of 4 teams that haven't scored 30 points yet this season, and the other 3 are 2-3 win teams that are going to fire their coaches. So this is a long way of saying, I think I know what's going to happen. I'd like to think I can follow the tea leaves. I'd like to say this is an informed opinion, but damn it, the Chiefs make you question everything that should happen. And for that, I think it's pretty awesome, because I've oftentimes said this. I don't mind being wrong in this space. I don't mind being wrong in sports broadcasting. The sports opinion makers that care about being wrong all the time and have to defend when they're wrong to the hilt they're, to me, lost. Because part of the beauty of sports is its total unpredictability. If we knew what was going to happen all the time, what fun would any of this be? The more unpredictable, the better. I still think the Chiefs are going to got in the AFC playoffs. But I have to say, Saturday's win, maybe a lot less confident in that take. A lot less confident. Before we go any further, I wanted to play for you a video, okay? And keep those comments coming, because we're going to throw some up on the screen there, and I can also answer a few questions that you might have. But I wanted to play this for you. This was an amazing gift that I got from the gang at Last Dive Bar. They are really just, my ride or dies. Brian and the gang at Last Dive Bar, you know me. I've talked about them often. They're sponsors of the show. They've been huge supporters of this endeavor here on YouTube and sent you guys a bunch of cool stuff. Well, they sent me a Christmas gift this week, and I unboxed it, and I got to play for you the video here. All right, everybody. This almost didn't happen because my guys over at Last Dive Bar sent me a package for the holidays, the holidays, and it went missing. We have 1 million packages here at Casa Amendo, and there was a bit of a fright last night when we were unable to locate this despite getting the confirmation that it had been dropped off. And after a Christopher Nolan movie to figure out who the guilty party was, finally found it behind a baby gate that was still in the box for Christmas. So here it is. This thing's huge. The box within a box. Looks like it's a Tombstone pizza. Yo! Dude! Oh my goodness. Look at this. Oh my God, look at this. Oh my goodness, look at this. Yes! How awesome is this? This is so great. Wow. Says, from Carved Up Designs, we can't thank you enough for having the fans of Oakland's back from day one. We love you, brother. Merry Christmas from your sponsor and friends, Last Dive Bar, Brian, Paul, and Carl. This is so
freaking cool. Oh my goodness. Yes. Thank you, boys. Thank you. Thank you for the hospitality and the love when I went out to Oakland back in June. Thanks for all the love and support on Watch DA Live. And thank you for a gigantic wooden cutout of my ridiculous cartoon head. Wow. Yeah. This is going up right behind me. Yes. Love it. Last Dive Bar. Check them out. LastDiveBar.com. Use code MOTHERSHIP for 15% off your order this holiday season. The holidays get brighter when you use code MOTHERSHIP for 15% off. Ma, what do you think?
I mean, that was so cool that they did that and carved up designs. Just did an amazing job. But those are the type of things that make them real special. So if you have a chance, remember you can use our code MOTHERSHIP to get 15% off your order from Last Dive Bar. Obviously, you won't get your stuff in time for Christmas, but if you don't have a Christmas gift for a friend or a loved one and you need one, you know what? You put in an order tonight after our show. You put an order tomorrow. Use code MOTHERSHIP, get 15% off. You print it out and you leave it in the stocking and say, hey, it's coming in the mail next week. And I know that Brian and the gang will get it out to you as soon as possible, especially if you use the code MOTHERSHIP. Then they know that you're a Watch the Alien and you know that they're going to work their arses off to make sure that it gets to you quickly. The elves at Last Dive Bar, I'm sure, will make sure they get that in the package in the mail real quickly. So thanks very much to that crew over there. They're salt of the earth, amazing people, and that's why they're part of this show, and that's why they're the perfect fit with you guys as a family that we have here on Sunday nights and on this YouTube channel. So that being said, seeing Rickey Henderson passed yesterday was a tough one, wasn't it? That was a tough one. Only 65 years old. I had a friend of mine who grew up on the West Coast text me and say, hey, how'd you guys on the East Coast feel about Rickey? Because he was a hero out here when we were kids. And I said, he was a superhero here too. The days, the years that I truly had baseball burned into me were my middle school years. That's like 88, 89, 90, 91, those years. That's my 4th grade through 7th grade. I'm playing Little League at that time. Baseball cards are booming. We're trading baseball cards. My middle school had a baseball card club that would meet once a week, and you could come together, bring your binders, and you could trade with everybody there and buy new packs of cards. I would go to card shows with my dad, Papa Amendo. I would find him in the newspaper or see some type of flyer somewhere around town and say, we got to go out to this card show. My dad was great about it. He would always drive me out to the card show, give me a few bucks, and, we could buy some old cards and I would learn about old players and whatnot. At that time, I was locked into the playoffs and, the Twib notes, This Week in Baseball with Mel Allen. Those were the days playing baseball at gym, playing baseball, in the park. Those were the days that I really loved baseball. And at that point in time, that's Rickey Henderson's peak. And that's when the Bash Brothers and those Oakland A's teams of the late 80s, early 90s are at their peak. So Rickey was very much a superhero. He was the coolest and baddest of the coolest team in baseball. Yeah, McGuire and Canseco were humanoids. They were behemoths, and there were so many cool players on that team. Dave Stewart, Dennis Eckersley, but Rickey was the baddest of them all. And I just remember thinking at 10 years old, how out of this world is this guy? Where if you walk him, it's a triple. Because when you walk him, he steals second, he steals third. There's nothing you can do about it. And I remember seeing Rickey steal the all-time record stolen base and holding the base aloft, and how amazing that is. And that moment, that moment is right here. And so I remember all of that as being such an amazing thing. And of course, you have to just tip your cap to a guy like that. It's just incredible. So, yeah, no doubt about it. He is a superhero in every way, shape, and form. And he will be sorely missed, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. Okay. I think we're back. I think we're back. If we're back, let me know. I think we're back. Anyway, I'll make things short and sweet here because my laptop just froze, and so the whole thing just became a complete disaster around here. I'm in the middle of my Rickey dissertation, and suddenly my laptop says your device ran into a problem and needs to restart. We're collecting some error info. Great. Fantastic. Yes. As well as says transporter malfunctioned. Yeah. So we are back. Different camera, different setup, total disaster. But you know what? We keep pressing on no matter what. So I was just saying that Rickey Henderson, who's posterized behind me, he was a superhero, when I was growing up in that era. And so the fact that he played into his mid-40s, the fact that he felt completely immortal, the fact that he was a power hitter at the top of a lineup, the fact that he was all flair, a stolen base machine, put the stolen base record into a totally different, dimension. The fact that he could pass away due to complications from pneumonia at 65 years old doesn't really equate in my brain. And so that one was hard to see yesterday. It was a really hard piece of news to digest. And I almost wonder if the fact that I was in the middle of my Rickey RIP eulogy and I pointed back at the poster behind me, and that's when everything blinked, was a comet with Rickey going across the universe as he spins around this globe of ours a million times over, because the guy was just all engine, all turbo boosters, all the time, all movement. There was never going to be another Rickey Henderson. There is never going to be another Rickey Henderson. And the fact that he grew up in Oakland, what a painful year for Oakland baseball fans to have lost the A's, and then one of their own, who was the Oakland A multiple times over, pass away at the age of 65. Doesn't seem fair. So many prayers to Rickey's family, and all of the stories that have come out about Rickey Henderson have all been pretty amazing. And I thought that one of the coolest ones was posted by my friend Jesse Agler, who is the voice of the San Diego Padres. And there was an excerpt that he posted from the book by Mike Piazza. And it was when the postseason shares came in, they would always have a debate how much the equipment guys got for postseason shares and how many shares a young guy that came up for just a cup of coffee during the season or just had a few at-bats in the playoffs or whatever would get. And Rickey would always yell, full shares, F-U, full shares, and would say, that can change that guy's life, full shares. Everybody always says he was generous to everybody. So he had an incredible legacy. He will obviously be missed. And Rickey Henderson passing away at the age of 65, no matter what, he will never, ever be forgotten. And for those on the West Coast wondering how he was on the East Coast, yeah, dude was a superhero here too. No doubt about it. All right, let's get a few questions up here. We have Carter Bainbridge, who is a relative newbie to the Watch DA universe, who's running things in place of Aiden tonight. And that's okay. What happened to my computer is not his fault. So the fact that he's taking the wheel of the mothership and driving it through the time-space continuum and keeping this thing going is a testament to him. But Aiden, if you've got any questions or comments that you want me to answer, you can throw them up there right now, because I'm happy to do so. For those of you guys that have been here the entire time, I appreciate it very much. And I'm glad that it seems like you really liked the conversation that I had with Zack Rosenblatt. He honestly did such a good job on that piece earlier in the week that I was so glad that we were able to get him on, and he was still doing it. He was still at the stadium, kind of like covering the Jets-Rams game, which could you imagine having to cover the Jets still at this point in time? My God. So pretty good that he was able to join us and seemed like he was, it seemed like you guys enjoyed having him on. So that was very cool. Yeah, after the power failure, the mothership has disconnected, says Cigar City Capo. That's right. We had a mothership power failure, but thankfully, no moment of silence needed, even though there was a brief moment in time where I was not here. I was still working to get back with you guys. There was no bathroom break, Craig. It does not matter. Even if I'm not on the air, I'm making sure that we're trying to get here because the bathroom is around the corner from here, Studio DA, and then it's close, but I had to keep pounding out the keys to make sure that we were getting back on. And yes, the crystals have been depleted, but it didn't matter. We were going to keep making sure that it worked to bring you back here and to get us back on the air. There you go. And we're back. And Stephen Murray says, cell phone time, baby. No, not quite yet. This is actually just a different laptop computer because the big one, the cool one, the fancy one that I just bought on Black Friday, which is why the new shot looks much better than the old shot. I don't think that was the problem. I think it was the laptop, but that big camera wasn't going to connect to the secondary laptop right away. And so there you go. That's how the sausage is made. Just so you know. By the way, Daly says, I thought that the Bills were wearing those old loser Pats uniforms. I love the old Pat Patriot uniforms. I think they're awesome. I think they're much better than the Flying Elvises. But I agree, it looked like the Bills were trying to copy the old Patriots with those uniforms today that had white tops and red pants. And I thought, unless you're trying to troll the Patriots, I would hold off on using those until a different opponent. I didn't mind them. I thought, in fact, for some way they were kind of they're not loud and noisy like the all reds. I'm never going to be into color rush. So these actually were okay, but I just thought it was the wrong opponent to break them out with. So that's what I liked them, just wrong kind of day to do it. Wallace says, perhaps Mahomes is the real alien. Yeah. I mean, in many ways, you look at Patrick Mahomes, and like I was talking about, him surviving this injury, not surviving, but thriving with high ankle sprains. Like, who the hell can do that? Well, what the hell? It's like, if that's not going to slow you down, when is anything going to slow you down? How can you be knocked down if the injuries themselves actually don't slow you? But Donna Jean saying, I'm eating a Big Mac without sauce tonight while listening to your take on Mahomes. That's exciting. Although I don't know why you would do Big Mac without special sauce. I love a Big Mac. If I go to McDonald's, the order that I want to get, my ultimate order, is a Big Mac, fries, fountain Coke. Not diet, just Coke. And I don't do it often because I realize that at 45 years old, it's probably not the best idea. But honestly, I think that part of the beauty of the Big Mac is the special sauce, a huge part of it, right? So in many ways, eating a Big Mac without the sauce feels almost sacrilege. Larkin says, DA, you are now a Woody. Yeah, that's right. With the big, giant wooden head, now I'm the Woody. Hopefully, I have less issues with my first of kin than Woody Johnson. I will say this. If you ever go and listen to my show and I'm taking tips on how to run my show or run my company or business from AJ, we've got some real issues. If AJ's 17 years old and telling me what to do, Dad, you got to talk about this. Dad, you got to run this. Dad, you're not getting a commercial break fast enough. We're all in real problems then. We're all in a real situation at that point in time. Okay. Anyway, I think we're almost out of here on that note. So I'll tell you. Next week, we're back to full strength. Aiden is back running things. And so we'll have all the bells and whistles. We'll have all of the graphics and the music and all that jazz. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Make sure that you are locked in for the playoffs as well, because when we go live on Sunday nights, we'll have playoff games to talk about coming up in just 2 weeks. So that's going to be freaking awesome as well. And also, once we get through the holidays, we're going to kind of reset on giveaways. And Last Dive Bar and I are going to come together and do some merch, which is going to be really, really cool. So if you are a hardcore D-Alien and you've been with us for a couple months now, maybe since when we launched this almost a year ago now, back in late February, early March, I think it was, then we've got some real treats for you because we're bringing together the forces of good to create some really badass swag, all right? So thanks, everybody, for checking us out. Thanks, everybody, for sticking through the technical difficulties. And thanks to all the Watch the Aliens for making this thing go. I will see you tomorrow morning on SiriusXM Channel 82. Listen to the DA show with Babchick. And tomorrow morning, number one. That's right, number one on the 12 DAs of Christmas. If you've been listening to the countdown of the top 12 most memorable moments of the year, you will have heard the great Stephen Murray, our voice guy, doing the one and only Morgan Freeman. Yes, how awesome is that? It's so funny every single time we play it. So I definitely think you got to listen in tomorrow morning to listen to Morgan and to check out what the most memorable moment of the year was. The 12 DAs have been such a hoot that you got to listen. Also, the Secret Santa special is uploaded right now to our SiriusXM app, which has a bunch of secret guests and some Secret Santa gifts, which are very funny as well. So check it out on the SiriusXM app. Search Post Game Party there to watch. Yes, you can watch the holiday special, the Secret Santa special. Until then, we'll see everybody. Be good. Be good to one another. The mothership disconnects.